In the year 1795, the streets of Paris buzzed with a frenetic energy, the tumult of the French Revolution painting the city in shades of upheaval and desperation. People queued outside banks, clutching trembling hands around bundles of the new currency, the assignat. These notes, backed initially by the confiscated lands of the church, had become the talismans of financial hope amidst the chaos. Yet, within a few short years, scenes of hopeful exchange turned into frantic bargaining, as inflation spiraled out of control. The assignat, which began with a face value of 100 livres, plummeted to mere pennies, a silent testament to war-induced economic conditions that devastate currencies. As history has shown, the fall of empires often shares a sobering common thread, the demise of their currencies. War and conflict ignite a relentless cycle of economic instability, leading to the collapse of the very money that once facilitated prosperity. Today, we delve into 9 currencies that were utterly destroyed by war, examining how these monetary failures mirror the patterns even today's nations find themselves navigating. At the number 9 spot, we find the Cairo, the emblematic currency of the early Byzantine Empire. By the early 7th century, the Byzantine economy had peaked, fueled by rich trade routes and a stable currency. But as Arab armies expanded, the military expenses mounted, leading to monetary policy oversights that would devastate the Cairo. By 695 AD, overzealous emperors debased the currency, issuing coins with less silver content, ultimately leading to hyperinflation. In its final throes, the Cairo became synonymous with worthless currency, lingering as a warning of how military overspend can erode even the mightiest of empires. As we move to number 8, our gaze shifts to the Continental Congress, where the Continental Dollar materialized during the American Revolutionary War in 1775. Desperate for resources to fuel their fight against British tactics, Congress issued paper money with a face value of $2 million. However, rampant printing soon diluted its worth. By 1781, the Continental Dollar had depreciated drastically, trading at less than 1% of its original value. The phrase, "not worth a continental," symbolized much more than mere currency. It marked a pivotal moment where wartime currency debauchery faced public disdain. This reflects a recurring truth: excessive debt accrued in war can lead to a currency's swift devaluation. At number 7 is the marka, the currency of Finland, which found itself at the center of tumult during World War I and the Finnish Civil War. As conflict escalated in the early 20th century, the Finnish government issued emergency currency notes to secure military funding, resulting in a rapid devaluation. By 1918, inflation reached staggering heights, with prices doubling every few months. The marka's ultimate collapse in late 1919 underscored a key lesson: in unstable times, the relationship between governments and their currencies becomes perilously frayed. Moving to number 6, we arrive at the Reichsmark, Germany's official currency in the early 20th century. Initially, Germany saw a post-World War I boom thanks to the currency reform of 1924, which made the Reichsmark a strong currency. However, the reparations imposed on Germany by the Treaty of Versailles left the nation economically crippled. As financial strain worsened, hyperinflation took hold in the early 1920s. By November of 1923, prices skyrocketed, with a loaf of bread costing 200 billion Reichsmarks. The currency spiraled into worthlessness, standing as a vivid reminder of how wartime debts can lead to financial annihilation. Coming in at number 5 is the Zimbabwean dollar, a more recent example etched into the fabric of economic history. The early 2000s brought turmoil as Zimbabwe became embroiled in conflict, corruption, and land reforms that decimated agricultural productivity. To finance its operations, the government resorted to reckless printing of money. By January 2008, inflation soared over 231 million%, rendering the Zimbabwean dollar nearly valueless. Its collapse forged the reality of extreme hyperinflation, leading to the eventual abandonment of the currency in favor of foreign alternatives, proving that confidence, once lost, is difficult to regain. Our number for entry takes us back to the depths of the Roman Empire and the denarius. Once a beacon of stability, the silver denarius was a valuable currency that facilitated trade throughout the empire. But as costs mounted due to continuous warfare, emperors resorted to debasement during the 3rd century AD. By 270 AD, the silver content of the denarius was less than 5%. This devaluation fueled years of inflation and civil strife, a clear reflection of how sustained conflict can hollow the very core of a currency's value. The denarius's journey from prosperity to irrelevance serves as a historic parallel to the fragility of fiat money. At number 3, we examine the French Assignat, whose journey we began with. It emerged in the wake of the revolutionary fervor of 1789, initially promising value based on confiscated church properties. However, the nation's debts mounted as war against coalitions of monarchies escalated. By 1796, Assignat's value plummeted to 1/20th of its original worth, symbolizing the catastrophic consequences of over-reliance on paper money backed by dubious assets. It stands as a cautionary tale that echoes forward in time to modern economies, serving as a warning about the perils of inflation birthed from conflict. The number 2 spot belongs to the Bank of England's banknotes during the Napoleonic Wars. The costs of the conflict forced Britain to turn to banknotes extensively. By 1814, the British government had issued such a vast number of banknotes that market confidence waned. The initial promise of gold backing became diluted as inflation reached significant heights post-war. The aftermath illustrated the necessity of sound monetary policy and public trust in currency, breathing life into the adage that even a powerful empire can fall if its currency's credibility is compromised. Finally, we arrive at the top of our list, the Soviet Ruble. Initially, it appeared resilient, transitioning from the Tsarist currency during the 1917 revolution. However, the toll of World War II and subsequent Cold War tensions strained the Soviet economy. As the government printed money to fund military expenditures, the ruble succumbed to devaluation. By the late 1980s, inflation reached unprecedented levels. The eventual dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 saw the ruble plunge into chaos, and the once steel-clad currency crumbled when stripped of political and economic stability. Now that we've explored these 9 currencies, it's essential to recognize the repeating pattern through these stories. Empires falter not by chance. They cycle through similar stages. Periods of expansion built on sound money give way to debt-funded militarization, followed by reckless printing that erodes public confidence, leading to a severe devaluation or the collapse of their currencies. Which empire do you think we are most like right now? Tell me below. Every empire believed it was the exception to this cycle, forging an unwavering conviction in their own exceptionalism. Yet this belief in their uniqueness often marks the beginning of their downfall. It serves only to blind them to the patterns of history that persistently repeat. Ultimately, we must consider how countries today learn from these failures, or write their own script in history. Remember that the real warning signs are seen in spending behaviors, public confidence in currency, and the balance between military ambition and economic soundness. Embrace the lessons from the past, for this knowledge builds resilience against future calamity. Every great power believed it was different. The ledger disagreed. Subscribe, one collapse decoded at a time. The decline of currencies under duress from war often reveals deeper, underlying trends that extend far beyond the immediate tactical financial decisions made by states. Each currency on our list experienced not merely the consequences of monetary mismanagement but encapsulated the broader spectrum of societal impact stemming from conflict. Let us delve deeper into some additional examples, highlighting not only the failures of these currencies, but also the intricate relationships between war, economy, and public trust. At number 9 in our extended analysis, we revisit the Cairo of the Byzantine Empire. The 7th century was marked by continuous conflict, and as the military budget grew, Emperor Constans II, recognizing the urgency of the need for funds, resorted to the practice of coin debasement in 641 AD. Though initially, the Cairo was a representation of the empire's faith, the shift to lesser quality metal plunged its value. By 697 AD, these coins which had once inspired economic confidence now flooded the markets, leading to market collapse. The atmosphere of instability created by foreign armies, coupled with internal strife, illustrates how a government's choice to fund its ambitions through currency manipulation can lead to loss of faith and the eventual disintegration of trust in money itself. As we progress to number 8 on our list, the tale of the continental dollar unfolds with deeper implications. During the American Revolutionary War, Congress's decision to print more currency was a pragmatic response to an extraordinary predicament. Yet, the unyielding reality of overproduction was evident. By 1780, 12 different denominations of continental dollars existed, owned primarily by a disillusioned public exhausted from war. A failed attempt at backing the currency with precious metals transformed into over-reliance on public faith. Ultimately, the continental dollar became synonymous with scorn, as the very phrase, "not worth a continental," spoke volumes about the fragility of national unity and financial integrity forged in turmoil. Transitioning to number 7 in our extended exploration, we can examine the marker during the Finnish Civil War. The burgeoning conflict of 1918 found Finland divided and desperate, meaning that issuing emergency financial measures appeared indispensable. Inflation surged uncontrollably, and the marka suffered its dramatic collapse by late 1919, featuring 6 zeros effectively erased from the national currency. As trust evaporated, businesses shuttered, payments defaulted, and the public's willingness to accept the marka, a currency tied to unfulfilled promises of economic stability, reached a breaking point, providing an implicit lesson on the paramount importance of societal consensus in maintaining currency value. The 6th unit of our analysis centers on the Reichsmark of Weimar Germany. Hyperinflation served not merely as a monetary disaster but became a catastrophic socio-political phenomenon. By November 1923, the sheer absurdity that led to a loaf of bread costing hundreds of billions Reichsmarks epitomized the chaos unleashed by inadequate fiscal management in tandem with punitive reparations. While economists often quibble over the exact figures, it was estimated that prices doubled approximately every 3 days. A society that once boasted the world's strongest economy now stood poised on the brink of starvation. Public trust shattered, civil unrest ensued, and ultimately, the conditions birthed a vacuum filled by desperate ideologies. This cyclical pattern forewarns how wartime debts can manifest in social disintegration and extreme political outcomes. Our analysis of the Zimbabwean dollar encapsulates a principle observed in the aftermath of warfare. Between 2000 and 2008, the Zimbabwean economy deteriorated under immense pressure from corruption and collapsed agricultural productivity due to land reform. Driven to fund their operations, government authorities printed money indiscriminately, resulting in staggering inflation rates of over 231 million% by January 2008. Here, the economy imploded as consumers returned to barter systems, fearing the total devaluation of the currency they once relied upon. The Zimbabwean dollar's life ended not merely as a currency but as the ruin of an economy, piercing the illusion of unrestrained power emanating from central authorities. Entering the 4th layer of complexity, we return momentarily back to the silvery denarius of Rome. The 3rd century crisis was not just a story of monetary upheaval, but a reflection of imperial ambitions. The denarius, minted for over 3 centuries, once boasted a high purity of silver. However, as the empire faced relentless external threats, emperors initiated systemic debasement to fund military campaigns. From a 95% silver composition down to a meager 5% by 270 AD, the denarius became a shell of its former self, discrediting an entire monetary system. Moreover, the collapse fostered a fracturing society, as local trade networks dissolved and reliance shifted to bartering, undoubtedly a ticking clock on the Roman Empire's broader decline. The grim narrative transitions to our number 3 focus, the French Assignat. By mid-1796, the assignat's worth had plunged to 1/20th of its initial value. The fervor following the revolution, once characterized by a hope for equitable financial reform, devolved into economic despair. The rampant issuance of these notes, painfully disconnected from tangible assets other than confiscated territories, initiated a rapid decline. The assignat didn't just collapse numerically, it destroyed the French populace's belief in state-backed currency, leaving echoes of uncertainty that would plague post-revolutionary France. As we ascend to our number 2, the Bank of England banknotes during the Napoleonic Wars unveil similar patterns of tumult. The British government's reliance on banknotes was initially a temporary solution, yet soon morphed into a mainstream currency instrument amid escalating war costs. By the end of the conflict in 1814, a proliferation of banknotes flooded the market. Gold standard backing waned, and confidence dwindled. Inflation surged, and the post-war fallout featured immense economic instability, which effectively birthed a series of crises that would serialize throughout the 19th century, emphasizing how even the strongest economies can falter when confidence is compromised. Finally, we re-examine the Soviet Ruble, a poignant reminder of currency weakness during geopolitical turmoil. The ruble transitioned from Tsarism to revolution, juxtaposed against the landscape of military expenditure. However, the monumental toll of World War II saw resources drained as economic structures creaked under the burden of funding armed conflict and asserting global influence. By the late 1980s, inflation spiraled out of control, laying bare the consequences of a currency linked inseparably to political machinations. The ruble's downfall encapsulates not just monetary despair but represents the crumbling of societal norms and national identity, with the eventual dissolution of the Soviet Union echoed in economic devastation. Beyond these examples, looking closely at modern economies, we observe unsettling parallels. Countries embroiled in conflict or undertaking vast military endeavors often see similar patterns, a move from sound economic policy to reckless spending, ultimately culminating in severe devaluation or complete currency collapse. Throughout history, nations pressed to defend sovereignty inevitably confront the perils of financial mismanagement that correlate directly to wartime aspirations. As we reflect on these narratives, we must recognize the timeless lessons that inspire vigilance. In the present day, signs of over-reliance on printed currency often emerge when the burdens of war are upon nations. Currency stability hinges on the balance between responsible fiscal management and societal trust, a balance that, once shattered, proves exceedingly difficult to restore. Understanding these cycles is not just the study of past failures, it is an observation of repeating truths. Economic history serves, before anything else, as a ledger of lessons inscribed in blood and ambition. Every empire believed it was different. The ledger disagreed. Subscribe, one collapse decoded at a time.